say the game is getting old. Monday morning and your coffee's cold. Life is not what you want it to be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, we have another great show. Wow, is it great? Guess who we brought back for a second edition show? Yeah, Gina Gardiner is joining us again. Oh, she is such an unbelievably positive, warm, kind, loving, gentle, and yet will get in your face and say, you need to change, people. That's who she is. And Gina's back with us. Thriving, Not Surviving is the book. We're going to get into the secret pathways, happiness, success, purpose. We're going to deal with some of the issues that so many of us are dealing with and trying to figure out, you know, how we're living. I know that so many of you have written me and have said to me, either face-to-face or in some other way, have said, you know what, I'm not dealing well with this whole COVID thing. And some of you have said, you know, not only am I not dealing well with it, I have found myself not being able, I'm confining myself so much that I'm not being able to actually live my life. You know what, Gina and I'm telling you, this book is so good because it's really going to help you live during this time. I'm just telling you it will. I'm just telling you it will. And we're going to talk to her in just a minute or two. But before we do that, let's do what we do every week, right? I talk to you about your training, right? We're in the midst of battle here, folks. Let's be honest. I mean, you know, I don't care where you live, somewhere out in this world. And by the way, thank you, entire world. We're in over 60 countries around the world that listen to this show. And I just want to thank all of you all over the world for listening to the show. We appreciate you. And I know that this coronavirus thing is not limited to the United States. And Gina will tell you it's not limited to the UK where she lives and she's listening in right now. It is a worldwide phenomenon. And I have said now for several weeks, maybe even a couple months now, that, you know, if you really think about the 4 areas of your life, you have to think about your training. Because the better you train, the more likely you will be capable to survive in a more thriving manner. If you recall, I have interviewed so many people from the Special Operations Forces, and they have told stories of other people, and they all have said pretty much the same exact thing, and that is, you know, when things get rough, when things get bad, when things get tough, when you're exhausted, when you're at the end, the only thing you have left is to rely on your training. And that training is 4 parts. It's training the physical, it's training the mental, and it's training the emotional, and it's training the spiritual. And by the way, you should be training every day in all 4 areas of your life. Somehow, some way you should be training, because the truth of the matter is in this time, we're only as good as our training. So you should be doing something in those 4 areas that is making you better, stronger in all 4 areas of your life. So I want to go through those, and I want to check in with you, and then I'm going to give you some ideas. All right, because I think part of this section of the show is not just about me finding out what your training number is, but, you know, also giving you some ideas of what you can do, right? So we're going to start with the physical. How's your physical training? Scale of 1 to 10. 1's miserable, 10's outstanding. You know, when we talk about physical training, you know, it's very easy to say, you know, well, let's take a look at your exercise and your diet and drinking water and rest, right? All 4 of those are really, really important when it comes to your physical training. And you need to get plenty of rest. You need to get plenty of water. You need to get plenty of exercise. You need to eat right and get rid of the junk that you're consuming. You need to, you know, quit the bad habits. You need to stop the sugar, right? Stop the sweets. Stop or cut back your drinking if that's what you're doing. You need to do that, right? To be the best version of you. But I will also tell you, there's some places out there I know you cannot go to the gym. Folks, there's so many things you can do. You can walk, you can do push-ups, you can do things to do sit-ups, you can do squats, just standing still, and just, you could do a wall sit. There are just so many ways to do exercises. When people say they can't exercise without a gym, that's an excuse. Don't give yourself an excuse. Your training is that important physically, right? And by the way, listen, I'm going to say this. I'm not a doctor, medical doctor, but I'm going to just say this, right? Before you do any exercise, check with your doctor and make sure you're healthy enough to do it. All right? All right, so there's your first number, scale 1 to 10, physical. Okay, let's go to mental, right? Mentally, what I ask you to do is I ask you mentally to not be a passive recipient of your mental ability. Meaning, don't just let things come at you and absorb you. Be an active participant in mentally challenging yourself, right? That often means doing a number of things. I hear people say to me all the time, I can't read. Yes, you can. It's not that you can't read, it's that you don't want to take the time to read, right? But reading is one of the best things that you can do to be an active participant in your own mental training. All right. I said this last week. I'll say this again. The difference between successful people and not so successful people, one of the differences is that not so successful people sit in front of very large, big screen TVs that are on. Not so successful people sit in front of large shelves of books that they pull down regularly and read. That's what successful people do. They have big screen TVs. They just don't turn them on because they're too busy being an active participant in their mental training, right? So this means being very active, consuming, learning something, learning a new instrument, learning a new language. All those things are all part of actively pursuing how you can be better in your mental training. All right. So a scale of 1 to 10, 1's miserable, 10's outstanding. How are you doing mentally? Third, your emotional training. And we talked about this too. And one of the things we talk about emotionally is that, where are you at emotionally on that scale of your training 1 to 10, right? And training, your emotional training comes every day. I'm just telling you, there's going to be some sort of challenge that's going to happen to you where you're going to have to make an emotional choice how you're going to respond. You can either respond angrily, you can respond maybe a sadness, you can respond with joy, you can respond in some levels in between. Maybe I'm frustrated, maybe I'm miffed, maybe I'm a little blue, maybe, yes guys, blue is not just a color, it's also a level of sadness. Okay, but it could be there's so many variations that you can choose from that when things come at you, how you choose to respond, that's your training. So here we are in the midst of a pandemic right now, right? And a lot of you are feeling depressed because you can't get up. Folks, don't let the pandemic do that to you. Gina's going to talk about this a little later. But don't let the pandemic do this to you. Make a choice. Become active in a different way, emotionally. That great training ground we are in right now, by the way. Great training ground. Because one, by going through this, we're going to build resilience. That's amazing. That's just positive things. Just all sorts of positive things are happening because of this. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your emotional training? And then finally, the last piece, the spiritual training piece, right? And folks, I'm going to just tell you something about the spiritual really, really quick because we're all spiritual. Even if you deny it, you are. And I'll tell you why. If you plan on going on a vacation, or if you have plans to go out to dinner with friends, or you have plans to do something, if you plan to even go to the grocery store, right? Guess what that is? Faith. You believe that you're going to do that. That's faith. Hasn't happened. Can't really see it, but you're going to do it. That's faith. That's spiritual. It is. And beyond that faith piece, which we all have, that we believe that we're going to go to work the next day, or we believe that we're going to do this or do that, or we're going to spend time with the grandkids or, with the kids, whatever it may be, right? We have faith, right? Beyond that, we all have something that we kind of go to that settles us down to center, that settles us down to a core, all right? For some people, it's God. For some people, it's nature. For some people, it's meditation. For some people, it's something else. The question is it working? And how's the training going? Right? Because, see, right now, we're in the middle of that spiritual training of being able to still stay centered, to still stay joyful, to still stay at peace, right? In amongst all this is what we're trying to do, right? And that's how you determine if what your training's working or not. Is that happening for you? If it's not, right, well then, right, we need to make some adjustments. As I've said before, spiritual is not going to church and thinking about fishing. Spiritual is going fishing and thinking about God. That's spiritual. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing? Well, you've got 4 numbers, right? The 4 legs of the chair. I always say it. Chair's uneven. Guess what? Posture's bad. By the way, if the chair is too low, can't eat the right table. And you know who's with us today, and I love her dearly because she has been such a great guest, and she is so amazing. Her name is Gina Gardiner. She is a #1 international best-selling author. She's a motivational speaker. She's an empowerment and relationship coach and transformational leadership trainer with well over 30 years of experience helping people experience happiness, success, and fulfillment. She's the founder of the Thrive Together Tribe and a personal and spiritual development program. Gina's also had to learn to walk twice as an adult. For over 20 years, she ran an award-winning school for the most part from a wheelchair. The gift of this experience, and she does see it as a gift, was the development of a unique approach to life and development of leadership, which we're going to talk about, thriving, not surviving. And since her time as basically they called them headship, but she was like a principal, she has worked with countless individuals, couples, teams, and organizations, helping them to step into the potential and to learn lessons from the past and to recognize that it is their choice to step into their power and live a fearless life. Gina is passionate about supporting people to live a truly happy, successful, and fulfilling life, and she rejoins us again here on A New Direction. So everybody, welcome to the show. And Gina, welcome back to A New Direction. It's great to have you on. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for coming back. It's absolutely brilliant.
We talked so much about the early portion of your book, and I was thinking, we never did really ever get to chapter 4. The truth of the matter is, we really never got to the secret pathways. We kind of brushed over them. But I think it's really, really important because the very crux of your book is the 5 secret pathways to happiness and success. And the brilliant thing about your book is that prior to all that, prior to chapter 4, you're like giving us so much great practical information through a fire hose that we're drowning in just amazing information that you supply for us. But I feel like right now in this pandemic, and you and I were talking a few minutes before the show started, we're having some problems, aren't we? You're seeing it too.
We are indeed. And I think, you can see it as a really negative thing, and I am not making light of the suffering that people are going through.
Right.
And there are terrible things happening around the world. But I also think that this is an opportunity for growth. And, the universe often gives us a bit of a nudge when we're not, as individuals or as a collective, we're not doing things in a way that's conducive to the benefit of all or the benefit of the individual. And we get a little nudge and then we don't take any notice, and the nudge gets bigger, and then we get a stiff kick, and then we get a slap round the head. And I have a real sense that at the moment that we as a human race are being given a big slap round the head. And being given the lockdown gave people the opportunity either to go and hibernate and snooze, or to really start to identify what's important in life. What are our core values? How do we want to live? How do we want to live as individuals? How do we want to live as a collective? And I believe that the turbulence that we see is giving us all an opportunity to recognize that we need to do things differently, and that you can choose to be unresourced and fearful about what's going on, or you can choose to use this as the opportunity to be more awakened and to do things differently.
You know, that's so good. By the way, by the way, you are so good about just getting, because you know where I'm going. I know you do, but I'm like going, all right. So it's just so funny because I'm like going, so she's leading me into my own show so that she can get me to say. So at the end of the day, it comes down to secret pathway 1 is where we're going to start, because this is what you're getting at, right? Is our beliefs. Because
Yes.
right, why is belief a secret pathway? Help us understand why belief is a secret pathway, and then help us understand how this plays a role maybe in this whole situation, that we can maybe, how do we change it? What can we do with all of this during this time when it comes to
The
belief?
reason it's a secret pathway is because, for the most part, the vast majority of people don't examine their beliefs to look at, are they empowering us or limiting us? These beliefs are installed usually when we're very young by a parent saying, oh, you're so silly, or you can't do that, or you know, money doesn't grow on trees, or, you know, there's nobody who's going to love you. And that belief becomes our reality. And most people, remember, 95% of our thinking is habitual. It doesn't cross our conscious mind. So we don't examine it. We don't check in to see if it's true. So in reality, it's hidden. It is secret. But once you unlock that secret and recognize that your beliefs actually are yours to do with what you want, and if you audit your beliefs and say, is this belief serving me? Or do I need to change it? That we all have the capacity, if we are awake enough and if we want to take that action, to change that belief. So I want to give you a couple of examples, and I may have used similar examples last time, but they're so powerful, I think they're worth hearing again.
Absolutely. I love having the same examples, because trust me, there's a whole bunch of people out there who didn't listen to the show the first time, and those that do need it anyway, because I need it. So yes, give us the same examples, even if they're not great. We're going to love them like we heard them for the first time.
Fabulous. So people may be familiar with Roger Bannister. He was the guy who ran the first 4-minute mile. But they may not know that the medics of the time said, if you run that fast, you'll die. It wasn't a maybe. Their belief was that you wouldn't be able to take in enough oxygen and you would die. And if you look at the footage, there are men in white coats holding oxygen bottles in pretty well the vain hope that when he collapsed, that they would at least be able to show that they were trying to resuscitate him. Now, that he ran the 4-minute mile, or sub 4-minute mile, I think is amazing.
Right.
But what I find so fascinating is that within 30 days, over 30 other people had run a sub 4-minute mile.
Whoa. In how many days?
In 30 days.
So within the month that he ran a sub-minute 4-minute, 30 other people ran a sub 4-minute, and within 30 days of that?
Yes.
Wow.
And if you think about it, they ran because they knew it was possible. Their belief that it wasn't possible to do it and live had been turned on its head.
Wow.
Now, there is a story, and I'm told it's true, but even if it's not, I think it has resonance. This is an American university, and there was a maths student who was doing his final year. And he couldn't make a lecture, but he was told by his tutor, I'll leave the equation on the board. You must do it, otherwise you will fail your degree. So he'd gone off somewhere. I've no idea what he was doing. He came back and he copied down the equation on the board. And he struggled with it, and it took him days, but he cracked it. And he gave it in to his professor, and his professor was dumbfounded. And the reason for that was it wasn't the equation that he was supposed to solve. The professor had rubbed that off by mistake. And what the student had picked up was an equation that all of the mathematicians in the land said it was unsolvable. Now, he'd solved it because he believed it was possible. So we are each governed by the beliefs that we have about every aspect of ourselves and of life. And those beliefs, unless we challenge them, become our reality. And so go back to The Secret. Think about things like money. People who struggle to earn money, or who struggle to keep money once they've earned it, every one of us will have a pattern of behavior around money that keeps reasserting itself. So it's very common for people who win huge amounts of money on the lottery to be back where they started 5 years later.
Oh, I know.
Now, you have to ask the question, why is that? It's my belief, and I've done a lot of research, but it's my belief that the reason for that is their default belief about themselves and deserving money and how they handle money takes them back to where they were. Because the decisions that they make based on the beliefs that they have consistently take them back to their default setting. Think of another area around belief. People who believe that I'll fail. If you believe you'll fail, many people don't even try. They think, well, I'm going to fail anyway, so if I don't try, in a strange sort of way, I haven't failed. But just as many people who fear failure fear success. And so just as things are going well, they don't believe they deserve success, or they believe that perhaps their friends won't like them if they succeed and they have to move out of their social group. They self-sabotage. So our beliefs govern every bit of our lives, whether we recognize that or not. So let's put it into the context of now. I believe that we have societal depression and societal fear. Every time you put the news on, every time people are talking, the vast majority of them are talking about what's not going right. I'm going to sneeze, excuse me.
God bless you.
It's hay fever. The whole tenor of the conversation and of their thinking is about all of the things that they can't do, the fact that it's not normal anymore, and I understand the anxiety around, I've lost my job, what will I do?
Right.
Or my children aren't at school, how are they going to cope? How will I cope with them at home? The problem when we live from a place of fear is we are incredibly unresourced. The part of the brain that deals with fear, the reptilian brain, is designed to keep us safe. And we are hot-wired, we were talking about this just before the show, we're hot-wired to look at uncertainty and things that are different as a real threat. And that comes from the time when we were cavemen and women, where any change in the environment, any change in people coming close was likely to be a marauding clan coming to rape and pillage. Any change in the weather was likely to be dangerous to us. Any animal coming close to us was going to be a threat to our very survival. The problem for us in the 21st century is we'd like to think we're incredibly evolved. That deep reptilian part of the brain, we are hot-wired to see uncertainty and change as a threat.
I'm gonna ask you to stop right there. Hold on for just a second, all right? Because, by the way, I need to do this. By the way, you're listening to Gina Gardiner here on A New Direction, and the book is called Thriving, Not Surviving, and we're going to be right back right after this. Hey, folks, you know what? I got to tell you something. I have two amazing sponsors. I just have to, and I got to tell you about them. Epic Physical Therapy is just fantastic. They really are. They've got coupled locations now, and I'm just telling you that people literally from all over the world come to Epic Physical Therapy. Literally, professional athletes from all over the world use Epic Physical Therapy right in Raleigh, North Carolina, to work on recovery, to work on some training methods. It's amazing, right? Why is that? Well, it's because, first of all, Epic Physical Therapy has an elite team. These group of therapists are literally not the cutting edge, they are on the bleeding edge of what it takes for you to be at your very best, regardless if you're an elite athlete or you're just somebody like myself who occasionally just does something stupid and gets injured. Here's the deal. They will provide you with a customized treatment plan, regardless of who you are, and it's going to be tailored to your individual needs. Why is that? Because they understand that the need to treat the entire body it has to be treated as a functional whole, not just the symptoms or the injury. So when you're ready for epic relief and you're ready for epic recovery and you're ready for those epic results, well, then don't look any further. You need to go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Kraft and Team Realtors. For 35 years, they have been serving the world. I'm not making that up. They have literally been serving the world. They literally have helped people all over the world buy a home, sell a home. Really? Right. And do you know, here's what's amazing, right? They're a locally owned, independent company. How does somebody who doesn't belong to a national brand able to help thousands of people from all over the world with their home needs? Well, I'll tell you how. She creates relationships. It's what she does, and that's what her team does. It is about the relationship first and foremost. It is about the fact that everything that you do when it comes to your home is going to be a memory. From the day you move in to the day you have your first child or the day that you have your first dog, those are all memories, right? There's all memories. And so she understands that those memories are important. Those are memories that make the home. It's not the bricks and the mortar, right? It's the memories we make that make the home. And so, you know what? Why not go to the memory maker, the relationship builder, the person that even her clients say her customer service is legendary? Don't look any further. Just check out lindakraft.com. It's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Gina Gardiner, who is I call it penetrating the heart. What she's done is, if you think of your heart as an onion with all these layers, she, like, in just a few minutes takes this giant needle and just penetrates all those layers and goes right to the core, and you go, ow, that hurt. But it's good hurt, and it's good because she's getting right to the heart of the matter, and it's so good. And we're still talking about beliefs, and she's talking about as I sadly had to cut her off. But we're talking about how, sometimes what happens is when we get under stress, our amygdala kind of takes over and we get amygdala hijacked, is what she's talking about. And all of a sudden we get incredibly wacky and we get extraordinarily emotional and we get out of control. Is that okay where I picked it up from?
It's great where you picked it up from.
You were so adorable. You really
I have to say that it's the first time that I have been likened to a penetrating needle.
Well, but you did. You went through all the layers in a very short period of time. You took all the layers and went right to the core of that. And all of a sudden I'm leaking out some of that juice because you pulled out the needle and I went, ow. Yeah, okay. All right. So I'm going to let you go ahead dig back in, Gina. Go ahead. Go.
The problem when we get into that place where we are stressed and anxious is we become entirely unresourced. We're not able to actually access the left side of our brain, which is the creative side, the solution finding side. And as a result, our world becomes smaller and smaller, and we retreat into our comfort zone. Now, a comfort zone is like a great big duvet, and at times it feels really, really cozy. But if it was 100 degrees outside, you wouldn't want your duvet. And the problem is that when you stay in your comfort zone, the world gets smaller. When you take the courage, when you have the courage to step outside your comfort zone, and your comfort zone is really about what's familiar, and you're prepared to actually look at what's unfamiliar, the interesting thing is that very quickly the unfamiliar becomes the familiar and your comfort zone expands. But what I think is happening for many people is they're fearful, they're stressed, they're feeling unresourced, there's so much uncertainty that they have not only have they retreated into their comfort zone, but they've actually snuggled up in that duvet, and the comfort zone's got smaller. Now it's an illusion. It's not safer. It's not going to serve you, because when you are in that state, you cannot access any of your inner resources. And the interesting thing about human beings is we are, as a species, incredibly resourceful. And if you're listening to this, one of the things I would say to you is, if you can get comfortable with uncertainty, and remember it's one of the constants in life, change, uncertainty are with us from the moment we're conceived until the moment we die, and who knows what happens either side of that. But it is a constant, as are death and taxes. And the more comfortable you can become with that, the more resourced you will feel, the more you will be able to find interesting and innovative solutions. You know, if you look at the challenges that have happened to mankind just in the last century or so, look at all of the innovation that came out of the 2 world wars. Things that people didn't see as being possible prior to those times. When you look back and you think, yes, it was a dreadful time, and I'm not suggesting we want it back.
No.
But out of that, people they dug deep and they found solutions that were never thought possible prior to that. And this crisis will be no different. We will look back at this, and, you know, the children will be able to say to, you know, I was out of school for this number of months in the pandemic, and parents will be able to say, you know, as a family, we survived the pandemic. And those who are single will be able to talk to their friends about it, and will look back. And when all of the real hurt and challenge have become slightly less raw, we will be able to see that there were and are still to come the opportunities to see the gifts.
I so agree with this viewpoint. I know it's hard to see it while we're in the midst of it, but if you look closely, I can tell you that I'm already seeing some great things. I'm seeing more families spend more time with each other than I've ever seen that in their lives. I'm watching this. I am seeing more parents invested in their children's education than they've ever been.
I agree.
We are seeing things that are, I'm seeing husbands and wives who were thinking about maybe we can't do this, realize that they need each other. I am seeing relationally a lot of really positive things. It doesn't mean that there's not bad things. I don't want, but there's a lot of really good things happening in here. I'm seeing technology change as a result.
And, you know, before the pandemic, I heard so often, no, you can't work from home. We haven't got the technology. We can't create the security. We can't this, we can't that. Within 10 days, people were set up to work at home.
Right. And by the way, they're functioning quite well.
And actually, you know, those bosses who said, well, they won't work hard, and we, you know, how do we make sure that we're getting our money's worth out of them? I've discovered that actually people are self-motivated and, generally speaking, are hardworking and want to do a good job. But I think all of this, what it shows us is that it's time for change.
Right.
And that if we can change, and those are 2 very simple examples, if we can change in that way, and we're open to look for the best way forward, and we focus our minds on that rather than, I haven't got this and I can't do that, and that's not fair and I don't like that, just think how much more we could do.
I know. That brings us to, you're so clever, that brings us to the second pathway that you call love. And some people get uncomfortable when they hear the word love, especially, you know, a lot of business people. I think love has nothing to do with business. Oh, Gina.
But they think of love as being pink and fluffy.
They do. They do. They don't understand. I don't think they understand the relationship connection and love. I don't think they really. So talk to us about why love is a secret pathway, and then let's talk about this in terms of, not just the pandemic too, but, how do we apply love back to a business setting?
Okay, so first and foremost, the most important person that we need to love is ourselves. And in my experience, very few people have learnt to love who they are, wobbly bits and all. Mm. And so they don't have a great sense of self. And one of the challenges then is that every relationship we have with other people is a reflection of the relationship we have with ourselves. So let me give you some examples. I work with clients from all over the place. And one of the most common things I find is if I said to someone, right, I want you to write a list of 5 things you don't like about yourself, they could write for pages and I'd have to stop them. But if I say write 5 things that you really love about who you are, most people struggle. And one of the challenges with that is if you love yourself, and we need to really define in my terms what I mean by love.
Right.
Love does not mean that you have to be a doormat and that you have to be a servant to your kids and to your partner.
Right.
Love does not mean that you let people get away with anything if you're talking about unconditional love. Because if you truly love somebody, you want the very best for them and from them. You have high expectations of them because you love them enough to know that they can be the best they can be. And so for me, loving yourself is, as you said right at the beginning of the program, it's about taking care of you. One of the things that concerns me is the number of people who use food, alcohol, drugs, both prescription and otherwise, shopping, sex, work, as a way of anesthetizing themselves because they're hurting. And in that attempt to feel good about themselves, they're actually doing more damage. Mm. Now, if you hear somebody say something nasty about you, it hurts, doesn't it?
Of course.
Yeah. However, if you then, if you say something hurtful about yourself, it is so much more cutting and damaging. And yet we do it, don't we? Yeah?
Yeah, no, I mean, how many times have I said to myself, you are so stupid. You're an idiot. Right? Because I did something that was foolish, or I did something, how many times do I cut myself down because I from the kitchen to the bedroom, I forgot what I was going in there for, right? And then all of a sudden I'm beating myself up for it, right? Even though it may sound playful, the truth of the matter is, you tell yourself that enough times, right? We can start to believe it, correct?
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, we make up these stories in our head about what we deserve. And as a result of that, we will put up with something that's awful, which we wouldn't do if we loved ourselves.
Right.
So it's up to us. Nobody else can do it for us. It's one of those things about the whole thing. What I'm feeling my way for the words because this is such an important thing for people to take on board. And I think one of the best ways to do it is to treat ourselves as we would if we were our own best friend. Because you treat best friends well, don't you?
Sure.
But if they do something that you don't think is right, you'll tell them. But you tell them in a constructive way and then you let it go.
Right.
But how many people do you know that when they've done something that they feel they shouldn't have done, or they haven't done something they should have done, that voice in their head goes round and round and round and round, days, weeks, months, years later? I was talking to somebody the other day and they call that voice in their head the parrot. And, they were going on about how this parrot had the power to take over their head and stop them sleeping. And I turned around to them and said, why didn't you shoot the blooming parrot? It's an imaginary parrot. There'll be no blood.
Right.
Give yourself permission to tell that parrot to shut the hell up.
Right.
Because you are generating that parrot.
Right.
And by loving ourselves, it does mean caring for yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, by being very clear about the sort of person you want to be.
Right.
Being the best version of you means loving yourself.
Right.
And if you don't recognize that you are enough, then that will inhibit your spiritual growth. It inhibits your emotional growth, but my goodness, we are going into a new era of consciousness, I believe. And in order to be awakened to that and to recognize the value that we have in terms of making a difference in the world, we have to start with us. And you can start in small ways. You, right at the beginning of the show, you gave people perfect examples of how they can start to love themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's been the whole, right, the show's called A New Direction, right? We try to help people find a new direction successfully in their life or their career and their business. By the way, I need to say this. We'll be right back. By the way, her book is called Thriving, Not Surviving, and it's Gina Gardiner. And by the way, I'm going to have links to the blog post so that you can learn more about her and also just so many things that she does in the tribe. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to come back right after this. Hey, everybody, listen, I need to tell you about Epic Physical Therapy because their facilities, I said facilities because they have more than one, they offer the most advanced top-of-the-line equipment, including the Ultra G anti-gravity treadmill. Awesome, takes all the pressure off your joints and allows you to still kind of run, right? The Normatec compression sleeves, awesome, puts pressure in the right spaces, and you know what, it's like all of a sudden, joints sometimes just need a little extra pressure, and then you get the sleeve on and all of a sudden you feel like, oh man, I'm stronger than I was, right? It's to help you kind of get ready. And then there's the Game Ready, which is my favorite, ice cold water and compression all at the same time on your joints. Oh man, it takes the swelling right out. Look, they are trained and certified in the most comprehensive and cutting edge treatments available, and here are just a few of them, right? Blood flow restriction therapy, you may have heard of that. Dry needling, which is awesome. By the way, even with dry needling, sometimes they'll hook up some of the electric pulses, the DC pulses, and pulse it into your arms. Man, it's just amazing. And then there's cupping. If you've ever seen the circles on the back of swimmers, it's because they're manipulating the muscle through the skin. Look, they are amazing. And I'm just telling you, you need to check them out. They're fantastic. You need, if you're ready for your epic relief, if you're ready for your epic recovery, if you're ready for your epic results, don't look any further. Just go to Epic Physical Therapy. It's epicpt.com. It's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors. You know what? For 35 years, they have been serving literally others all over the world. Linda's very first client was in 1985, and that client to this day still comes to see Linda 35 years later. That says something, doesn't it? Why? It's because they have a relationship, and that's how Linda started her business, and that's how Linda, as she grew her business, that's how she continues to still do her business. It's about the relationships, because there's nothing more important. The bricks and the mortar may go away, but the people and the memories never do. And that is why every relationship that Linda Craft and her team have are the most important and the most valuable assets that they know. Because the relationships at the end of the day are the only things that we'll remember. We'll forget a lot of other things, but we'll never forget how we make people feel, and we'll never forget how they've influenced us and make us feel. And that's why we so often say that Linda and her team are the relationship realtors, because that's their priority. And so if you want to have someone who can help you sell or buy your home, who's going to take an active interest in you and the pride that you have in either wanting to buy one or sell it, then why not start a relationship with Linda Craft and her team? I can promise you, as her clients say, the customer service is legendary, and you're not going to be disappointed. You can learn more by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction, and we're with Gina Gardiner and her book, Thriving, Not Surviving. We are talking about the 5 secret pathways to success, fulfillment, and even dealing with what we're currently dealing with, and we're even talking a little business, and we're doing a little bit of everything. That Gina, this book is so good because it can just talk about so many things. So Gina, when we last left you, and I'm so sorry to have to do that to you, but I do have to get a sponsorship in every now and then. But when we last left you, we talked about that our relationship with ourselves is really incredibly important, and that it's really, really, for us, we have to kind of, treat ourselves as our own best friend. And you make a really great point that, I'm thinking about my best friend, and when he's got kind of misguided, I will tell him, I will say, hey, look, I don't think you're thinking about this right. And let me tell you why. I think you're better than that. I think you can do even better. And it's interesting that I don't give myself necessarily the same credit that I would say to my best friend.
I think using the same criteria for ourselves as we do for other people, no better, but no worse, for me is the way to do it. Because so many people are much harder on themselves than they are on other people.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Now you asked me to talk about love in the context of business, and for me, enlightened leadership, and I believe we're going into a new era of enlightened leadership. We need to do something about the quality of leadership throughout society. And for me, one of the things that comes through is that this has to come from a place, and I call it love. It's the very opposite of leading from a place of fear. And leading from a place of love means that first of all, that you lead yourself. You have to model what you want in other people. So that's one of the reasons why loving yourself in the way that I describe is so important, because if you don't model it, then you're not going to get other people to do it for themselves. Loving doing it from a place of love means doing it from a place of compassion. It means caring about your staff and your clients and your suppliers. It means that those people recognize that you have a vested interest in them. They've done a lot of research about what motivates and inspires people. What is it that engages people in work? And money is not top of the list. It's about number 5, depending on which study you look at. What motivates most people is believing that actually that they have a contribution to make and that contribution is recognized. And if you're an enlightened leader, one of the things that you do is that you see the potential in others and you nurture that and grow it. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to put up with rubbish. In fact, quite the opposite. It means that you have high expectations, but that you support people in their growth. You have a culture of development rather than blame. It becomes a learning environment where everybody feels valued, but they also know what's expected of them. And if they're not delivering, then they're held to account, but in a developmental way. And I'd like to give you an example of what I mean, really, by going back to when I was a principal at school. So when I employed new staff, I would always have this I would say this at the beginning of an interview, and I would say to them, this is really important, not only for us to find whether you're the right person for us, but for you to decide whether we're the right place for you. So if you come here, these are our expectations, that you will work hard, that you want to learn, that you want to be a great team member, that you want to, that you're going to strive for excellence, and we will define with you what excellence is. We don't do moody, we don't do bad-tempered, we don't do blaming other people or not taking responsibility. So if you come here, you take radical responsibility for you. Now, just imagine it's a Monday morning, it's a young member of staff, and they've had a heavy weekend, and they come in and they're in a bad mood because they've drunk too much and they've still got a headache. So the first time that would happen, I'd just very quietly take them to one side and say, do you remember your interview? And they'd look at you blankly and say, do you remember the conversation before? We don't do moody, we don't do bad-tempered, because we're modelling for the pupils the very way we want them to be. We've got to be squeaky clean. So go and have fun at the weekend, but when you walk through the door on a Monday morning, come in a good mood, come ready to be a great example. Now, I'd use exactly the same tone of voice. It would be done quietly and privately so nobody else heard, but they recognised what I'd said in terms of expectation. I was then holding them to account. And so many people in a management or a leadership position, they think that they've set the expectations, and indeed they may have done, but often they're not clear, and often they don't hold people to account in a timely and a developmental way.
Right.
So loving is having high expectations of yourself and others, and being able to create a culture where people want to be their best they can be. And one of the compliments that I have had, the best compliments, is when teachers would go on to promotion, and I've had it said in various forms, but what I was able to do was to tell them it wasn't good enough, but in a way that they felt that they wanted to be better. And if you can do that as a parent or a partner or as a team leader or as the business owner, then you're going to get the best out of people. And the silly thing with all of this is that many people, many leaders, managers, business owners do not recognize that they are losing business. If you want great profitability, you have to love your people. You have to look after them. You have to take an interest in them, nurture them, develop them, grow them. It's brilliant business. More productivity, less illness, better relationships, and greater profitability are some of the outcomes, and there are many more, of leading from a place of love.
Her name's Gina Gardiner, and the book is called Thriving. And I've got somebody who just wrote me. She just wrote me and said, "I love your show, and I love what she's talking about." And she just literally just wrote me right now. And so you just need to know that you're resonating loud and clear with some people that are just listening to the show live and are just saying, "Wow." I don't, Gina, I know we're running low on time, believe it or not. But I want to try to sneak in a little bit about Secret Pathway 3 success.
Yeah.
Because you talk about the enlightened optimist.
Yes.
And I think that's because you know what? There are people out there who are listening to the show right now who think optimists are these flaky, people, but they're also the same people who are really in reality are they're not really they're what's the opposite of optimism? Not negativism.
Optimist.
Yeah, pessimism, right? So, yeah. But they say, well, I'm not a pessimist. I'm just a realist.
Okay.
Which, by the way, to me is kind of like when you put a mask on top of a pessimist. It's really saying the same thing. It's just that it makes you feel better about not being called a pessimist. Because I'm like, oh no, you're not. You're not a realist, because realists would see it both ways. They wouldn't see it as all negative, right? So talk to us about the enlightened optimist and why that's so important. And I'm going to do this. Because we've only got just a couple minutes left in the show. Can you kind of summarize that in a couple minutes?
A pessimist is looking back and is always stuck in the fear. A blind optimist is in la la land and doesn't look at the reality of what's going on. But the optimist who actually looks at the data, who is always looking for a positive outcome and a solution, that's what I mean. And it's somebody who is prepared to look at what's going on, but will recognize optimists always look for a solution. They realize that even if things are really dark, that if you are at your optimum in your ability to think creatively, to look for solutions, you will find a way through, or you will find something different, which very often turns out to be better.
It so saddens me that this show goes so fast.
It does go fast, doesn't it?
It really does go fast. And, you've been on twice, and I feel like you've only been on for like 15 minutes, at most, maybe 5. And here we are at the end of the show. And, I asked you last time you were on the show, and, at the end of the show, I'd say, the show's called A New Direction because we try to help people find a new direction in their life or their career or their business. So I'm going to ask you for a second new direction. So if you could leave people with a new direction, whether it's their life or their career and business, what kind of new direction would you give folks as they're listening in?
I think the new direction is actually to recognize that the solution is within you. If you look outside for it, then you're going to be dependent for what other people are prepared to give you. But if you look in, if you do the deep dive work on yourself, there you will find all of the resources, everything you need. Now, if you need some help to do that work, then reach out. But ultimately, you are the solution, and you have all of the resources available to you once you believe that to be true.
So, Gina, that's beautiful. I didn't ask you this the last time you were on the show, but I'm going to ask you this time. If people want to get a hold of you, and they want to learn more about what it is that you do, how can they do that?
Well, they can email me at Gina, Gina, at genuinely, and then a little dash hyphen, and the word you.com. That's genuinely, Gina at genuinely-u.com. You can go to either of the websites. That's genuinely-u.com or enlightenedleadership.co if you're interested in becoming an enlightened leader.
That's awesome. And I'm going to have those links, by the way, on the blog post as well. Folks, you are you've been amazing. You were the last time and you are this time. I can't thank you enough for.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
I really appreciate you coming back on the show. You have been great. People are responding all over the place. Just to let you know how much they just have enjoyed what you're saying and helping, and they love you. I'm just telling you, they do. They love you. They really, really do. And that's a powerful thing because we live in two different worlds. I'm here in the States, you're in the UK. So thank you so much, Gina. You've been great. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the show, right? She as advertised, she was better than even advertised. You know what I say to you every week, and that is this, right? Be inspired. Because when you're inspired, that means you'll start inspiring other people. And in turn, they become inspired, and then they start inspiring others, and that can make this world a great place. It really can. Next week, I'm going to be back with another great book, another great show, another great guest, and I can't wait. And I hope you'll join me too. And by the way, if you're listening to the show, and you like it, why not go and give us a 5-star review on iTunes, right? We can always use those reviews. They really do help. I tell you, they would help us a bunch. So as I say to you every week, ciao, everybody.
To go a different way, yeah. The time has come for a new direction. Yeah, yeah. New direction. Yeah, yeah. When you lost your confidence and the answers don't make sense. Got to keep your hope alive. You got to know you can survive. This is your time to fly. A new direction, a brand new day. A new direction, things are gonna change. You can find the strength to go a different way, yeah. The time has come. Your dreams will take you places you have never